Welcome to episode 17 of the Camera Shake podcast, the podcast about cameras, photography, videography, and everything that's got anything to do with that. Today's a very special episode because we have a guest on the show. It's none other than Mr. Dave Cox himself. If you cast your mind back to, well, very much to the very beginning of the Camera Shake podcast, I think it was probably about, was it episode 2, 3?
I want to say 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah. We picked up on an article on Petapixel that was talking about some guy, i.e. Dave Cox, going out in the middle of the night, light painting cars in the middle of lockdown. And we're going to play in some of the images in a bit. And I'm sure you'd agree, those are phenomenal images of cars. Now, the fascinating thing about that was not only that there were great images of cars that were light painted, but also, of course, that they were taken literally in people's driveways. Is that right, Dave?
Not quite driveways. I wasn't stepping on people's property. They're out on the street. Like you've got to be a bit careful about stepping onto people's private property in America.
Sure. Yeah, that could be dangerous.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with the idea?
Well, like when lockdown and quarantine struck in Los Angeles, it was, you weren't really allowed to go outside, and then it released a little bit so you can go out for some exercise. And because I hadn't been out for like 2 weeks other than to the grocery store, I was starting to get a bit depressed, a bit stir crazy. I couldn't shoot anything, and like, it just starts affecting you. And my wife basically got sick and tired of me being in a bad mood, which you can understand when you're living with someone else.
Yeah.
So we started going out for some walks, and I'm quite lucky where I live in Venice Beach. There's a lot of cool cars around. I started noticing them. I was like, oh man, I wish I could photograph some of these cars, but you can't go and knock on someone's door. You can't like reach out and organise shoots. You're not allowed to gather with people that aren't in your household. So that bummed me out a little bit. But then I thought, well, I could just light paint them where they're sat. And it was one particular car that I saw, which was I think it's a 1962 Ford Falcon, and it was an amazing like teal blue color, and I adored it. And that was the one car that wanted me to like start this process. And because I'm a bit anal when it comes to posting on Instagram, it's like I can't do one. I need to have at least 3.
Yeah, of course, for sure, yeah.
So then began like the hunt to go and find more cars, and I found much more than 3, like pretty quickly. And so what I do is I go around for a walk, like at lunchtime, just to get out, get some steps in, get some exercise and fresh air, and not look at a monitor anymore. And I'd see the cars, and I'd like basically take a photograph on my iPhone, so that way I had the location of where the car was. And then I'd come back at night and hope or pray or whatever that it would still be there. Now, the Ford Falcon actually was undercover at night, so I couldn't light paint it, and I went back twice to try and see if I could light paint it, and it was still undercover. So I left a little post-it note on the dash during the day just saying, hey, really like your car, can I take a photograph at night? So can you leave your cover off between the hours of 7 and 9 p.m? Here's my email address, here's my Instagram, just so you know I'm not a lunatic and trying to steal your car or anything like that. And we spoke, and he said, yeah, sure, I'll leave it off. And then
Great.
I went round and photographed it, and then messaged him saying, hey, you can put your cover back on. I'm done. Thanks. Cool. But yeah, that's kind of how the series went, and it kind of spiraled, and the more I did it, the more I liked it. It was kind of a new technique. I'm normally much more particular when it comes to light painting, and this was much more organic, and it was just a bit more, free. Like I wasn't really paying close attention. So it's literally one exposure for the sky, and then one exposure for the car, and that was it.
So did you always contact the owners of the cars before you went to photograph them, or did you ninja it out there?
That was the only person I spoke to.
Right.
And you would have thought, with people leaving their pride and joy outside of their house, that if you see a bloke dressed in black with a camera and a tripod around tea time, you're going to be like, well, what's he doing?
Right.
And I was quite cautious of this. And so I'd be very slow and methodical in putting the camera gear down and the tripod down, so it looked obvious what I was doing.
Yeah.
And tried my best not to look shifty whilst dressed completely head to toe in black.
Yes.
But most shoots lasted less than a minute. So.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I was only at each car for about 2 or 3 minutes total. That includes setting up the tripod, getting the camera out, getting the settings dialed in,
Right.
shooting it and leaving.
Did you literally do one pass on a car? Or?
One pass per car, yeah.
Right. Wow. Okay. So I think what would be really interesting would be to kind of talk about the process of light painting in general, because I think for some of our listeners and or viewers, when we talk about light painting, it might not necessarily be obvious as to how that actually even works, right? So what do you need? Like, how do you light paint something?
So light painting is using a light source to illuminate a subject. You can do it with, like, most people think of lighting a subject, they use like strobes or a hot lamp focused at something, whereas light painting, you're moving through an image. So basically you're taking a small light and making it massive because you're actually traveling along with the light. Cameras record light. I dress in black. They don't record shadow. They only record the absence of light. So that's how I don't show up. And then you just get the light streak in which you paint away with the exposure you took for the background.
So you dress in black for a particular reason other than just being a ninja?
Yeah. And it looks cool, but yeah.
All right, cool. Awesome. What kind of light did you use for that?
It's got 100. Do you want me to show you? I could probably go and
get
it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Amazing.
Totally.
Back in a second.
Cool.
Sorry about that. Okay. So this is the light itself. So if you can see, it's got an orange gel on top of it, so you can actually...
I won't lie, it kind of looks like a lightsaber.
Well.
Yeah.
So you used a lightsaber to photograph cars. Let's just put that out.
You are my hero.
I'm the nighttime Jedi. Like, but yeah, it's just a very bright light.
Darth Dave.
Darth Dave.
Darth Dave. Yeah, and that's at its lowest intensity. It's actually incredibly bright when you turn it all the way up. It gives me a migraine to look at it. So I tend to, like, if I'm doing a particularly challenging car and I have it at full intensity, I wear sunglasses at night.
Right. So is that like a specialist light, or is it meant for photography? Or what is it?
It's a video light, I think. So I can't remember the brand of it. I think it's called Camera Plus. It has many different names. It's made by a few different manufacturers.
Oh, right, okay.
And I think it's just a bicolor LED light for video production. And I just saw it online. I was like, it wasn't expensive, so let's get one.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we'll direct all of our listeners and viewers to your YouTube channel, because obviously you have lots of tutorials on there where I know you go into quite some depth about how you go around light painting. So everyone who's watching and listening, go and check those out, because it's unreal. But something I'd certainly like to know a little bit more about, if possible, is how do you go about setting up your camera? How do you go about knowing what are the right settings to set when you're pitch black and you're running a light over? You could be running a light over for 5 seconds. It could be 15 if you're doing one pass on the car. I don't know, but how does that process kind of work for you?
Yeah, that's quite interesting. It's actually a process of elimination.
Okay.
So first of all, you want to shoot at the lowest ISO possible, because you don't want a huge amount of ambient light in there. So you start at ISO 100. I use a shutter speed of 10 seconds, purely because it gives me enough time to get from the front of the car to the rear of the car in a smooth manner, and it gives me plenty of space. I sometimes fluctuate on that. Sometimes I go to 5 seconds, sometimes it'd be 20 seconds, depending on how much distance I need to cover, but typically it's 10 seconds. For the aperture is the amount of light that you're going to be hitting your sensor. So you've got obviously time, sensitivity, but the aperture is the amount of light that's coming in. And so this depends on how much intensity you want to put through the light. Now, normally I used to shoot at f8, but recently I actually like the shallower depth of field a little bit. So if you've got street lights in the background, it's quite nice to be able to throw those a little bit out of focus. So I've been opening up to about f5, 6, or sometimes I've done stuff at f2 before, which is a bit more challenging. But I tend to use an aperture that allows me to keep the car in focus, because it makes it much easier when you're merging passes together in Photoshop and getting a nice clean path around the car. So that's basically it. So but you know that you want to shoot the lowest ISO. You know that you want to get through the scene in a decent amount of time. So that really only leaves your your aperture values, and then your aperture also depends on how bright your light is. That's why I went for an incredibly bright one, so I can have a bit more flexibility. But the other thing is, I don't actually do this at the middle of the night. I rarely do it at pitch black. If anyone's thinking about getting into light painting, shooting in pitch black is the easiest way to start, because you can see immediately whether you've gone wrong or whether you're right. I tend to shoot just after blue hour, where there's still color in the sky, because I like to have more ambient light in there. And that's one thing I've been pushing myself more and more and more to do, is have more ambient light in it. It makes it much harder to light paint. It makes it much harder to make sure you're invisible as you move through the frame. But I think it changes the feel of the image a little bit. It doesn't look so forced or artificial. It kind of looks a bit more natural and stylized, which I like.
When you're shooting, let's say you're shooting in pitch black and you're walking through the frame and you're lighting the car, what happens to the background? Do you normally then end up with a really dark background, or how do you deal with the background itself? So
a photographer once told me that automotive photography is just landscape photography with a car in it. And I don't think enough people pay attention to that. Right. So a lot of people will focus solely on lighting the car. I want to learn a new skill. I want to make a car look good. Then it often looks terrible at the end of it, because they've completely neglected the surroundings of where the car is. So I like to make the background just as important as the foreground, or as the subject matter. So I therefore light the background as well. I typically do, what I'll do is I'll stand and just like hold the light in a single spot, and to create a hard shadow. And then I'll look at the back of the camera and see how that looks, and then work out if I need to fill in any details in the shadow, in the background, by just adding more light. And then I just light the car itself. And by doing that, if you give the car like a directional shadow, you kind of know how you're going to light the car. Then it gives you an area to focus on, or a style to focus on, and it makes sense as to with the lighting, so that all the lighting matches is what I'm trying to say. And sometimes if you're in an ambient location where there is like a street lamp or something, most people shy away from that, but I like to use that or embellish that and create the background from that as well. So use that light as the key light to give you a nice directional shadow, and then just fill in the car with the light painting.
So how did you come up with the whole idea of light painting in the first place? Did you know how to do that before lockdown, or was it just something where you thought, like, when you were in lockdown, you saw this cars, you kind of think, oh well, I need a way to photograph these cars, and that might be a method of doing it, or did you have you done it in the past? I mean, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I've been light painting for about 4 years now.
Right.
I was actually inspired by a photographer called Nick Williams. Back in the days when everyone used to be on Flickr, I used to see.
Wow.
Yeah. Back in the day,
it's up there with MySpace.
MySpace, yeah.
I used to see his images pop up. He's also a friend of Dan Feegans as well. So again, small world. And I saw his images, and they were like nothing I'd ever seen before. And I was like, what on how what? Like, I didn't understand. And rightly so, he was a little bit cagey about like telling us what his settings were and like what he's actually doing, because like it was his kind of style. So for like, I used to be an engineer and I'm a CGI artist, so I have a very quick way and method of reverse engineering how things are done. So I figured it out kind of quickly, and then tried it. Like as soon as I bought this, never doing light painting at all, and then I tried it out and I was like, yeah, got it. I understand now.
Cool.
So Dave, obviously you're it's hard to believe, given how we've been talking to you and what we've been talking about, that you're not actually a full-time photographer, right?
No, I am not. No.
So and you mentioned there that you're a CGI artist. So that's your day job, so to speak, correct?
Yeah, I'm a creative lead and lead automotive CGI artist for Taylor James in Los Angeles. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not from Los Angeles. I'm originally from London, which is where I used to work. Yeah. But I moved out here August 2nd last year. So I've literally been here just over a year.
Oh, I didn't realise it'd only been a year. Wow. And did you move for work, or I'm assuming you did?
I used to work for a competitor beforehand. I was with them for 4 years, and Taylor James had been interested in me, and we'd been talking on and off for a couple of years. And then one day they said, we would like you to come in, and then eventually with the goal to go and work in Los Angeles. And I was like, right, sign me up.
That's incredible.
Because that was a bit like a goal of mine for a long time, is to work abroad. And it wasn't until I went on a couple of shoots for work out in Los Angeles that I was like, no, I really like it. I could see myself living here, and rest is history.
That's amazing. There's a couple of things I want to dig into straight away on all of that. Is you mentioned that you were an engineer as well previously.
Yeah.
How did you move from being an engineer to CGI artist?
That's an interesting story. So I went to university in Birmingham. I was studying product design and engineering. Straight out of university, I got a job as a design and applications engineer. I used to make fittings, and I used to design fittings for like London Underground and hazardous areas and stuff like that. It was a good job. I liked it. I was good at it. I had a great team of people. But whilst I was at university, in my final year, in my final module, they showed us something called product visualization, more commonly known as CGI. And I started doing it. They said, make anything you want, make it look as realistic as possible. And I was like, you mother... Why have you only just shown me that this is a thing? And so I've got an engineering degree, have to get an engineering degree job. But like that little module really hit it home for me. So in my spare time, I used to model stuff. I used to model... the first thing I modeled was a BMW E30 M3, like one of my all-time favorite cars. And I spent 2 years modeling this, like everything, interior, engine, wheels, drivetrain, brakes, like everything completely from scratch. And I really, really loved it. And I was like, the more I did it, the more I wanted to do some work with it. So I got the odd freelance job. I made some sunglasses for an American company. I did a couple of other things. And I was like, right, I want to turn this into a day job. And so I started applying, got told to go away because I didn't have the experience. And then finally, one company in London decided to take a chance on me, and they brought me in. So I had to move from Birmingham to London, which is roughly double the cost of living. I then had to take a £6,000 pay cut as well. So my first year in London was a very, very tough one. I sold a lot of cameras and a lot of lenses just to pay rent.
Yeah.
And I was doing product visualization for buildings, so like architecture, so like new hotels, new houses and stuff like that. And I thought it was great. I was in this like new magical industry, completely self-taught, didn't really know what I was doing, but every day was a school day, like you're just constantly consuming from your peers, and it was fantastic. But my heart wasn't like with buildings. I wanted to do cars, so I moved to a different company over in Essex, and started working with brands like Ford and McLaren, and that was phenomenal. And we got to learn. I learned a huge amount more there. I thought I knew a lot, and then I learned a ton more. So I like being humbled in that way. I like to be taught new things. I think it's great. And then from there, I moved to another company in London, and then finally to Taylor James. So that was about 10, 11 years ago.
It's such a journey that it always inspires me, stuff like that, because I worked for Amazon in London for about 15 years, and then decided that I'm done. I couldn't do that anymore, and just went self-employed to do I'm doing various bits, a bit of photography, a bit of videography, a lot of audio work, playing bands, things like that, anything to make up a wage to pay the bills. But you went straight in really early on at doing something you love.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of thing that just really, really I find it inspiring.
Oh, because don't get me wrong, it was terrifying.
Oh, for sure. But it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I started to just think, I need to do something I actually enjoy and actually want to do. And to be able to do that a bit, sooner than that is absolutely fantastic. I love it. Absolutely love that.
I kind of felt, because I was an engineer for like 3 years, I think it was in the end. So like I was just aware that I'm getting older. I'm setting more roots down. You know, it's like it's now or never. I need to go into it.
Yeah.
And it's always kind of risky going into a whole new industry when you have no formal training or qualifications. Everything I knew I got from magazines, forums, or YouTube back in the day. Like, so it's all like I had to learn new software as well because the stuff that I knew wasn't what they used.
So that's your sort of CGI background. How did the photography get into that? Like, how did you get into photography in the first place?
Yeah, that's an interesting one as well. I think everyone likes photography from a young age, and it kind of like bothers me a little bit. But like, oh, when I was 8, I had a camera. Shut up! No, you didn't.
That's true.
Everyone had that little point and shoot, okay, but that doesn't make you a photographer. For me, when I was living in Birmingham, my wife was doing her masters, and her lecturer said it might be a good idea for you to like start a fashion blog. So that's kind of the industry you want to go into. Start your own fashion blog. And so she needed a photographer, and I was there by proximity because we were living together. And she had a Canon 1000D, I think it was. So I started taking photographs for her. I was like, I quite like this. Don't know what I'm doing, but I quite like doing this. So I was like, well, if I'm going to do this more, I'm going to have to learn it. So I bought a Canon AE1 program off of eBay for £30, and it came with 2 lenses. And over the next 2 years, I probably spent about £2,000 ruining film. But like, I learned the hard way. I had a little notebook where I'd write down all my EXIF data, like what film I was using, what shutter speed, etc., etc. And so I taught myself like completely manually, like the hard way. And then after I felt proficient with that, and I didn't ruin a film every time I shot on it, I was like, well, maybe I'll go and buy my own camera. So yeah, continuing taking photographs for my wife, then started doing portraits with models. So this is the days before Instagram, so I think it was like, I want to say Model Mayhem or something like that.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Or contacting people on Flickr and stuff like that, and started shooting models. And then I had a couple of friends that asked me to go and shoot their weddings. Then I had a few friends that asked me to go and they pay me to go and shoot their weddings. Then started working with a few other wedding photographers. And yeah, so that's how I like sunk my teeth into it. So I started knowing my gear and stuff like that. But it wasn't until we moved to London that I was like, I like cars, and I always have. Like I used to go and watch Rallycross with my dad down in Lytham Hill, like in Kent. And I haven't really photographed cars at all. And I used to stand on the side of the streets in London, like panning taxis and stuff like that, trying to get the technique down. And then I basically blagged my way into an event called Drift All Stars, and that was down in Wimbledon. I bought on the day my public liability insurance. I had to go over the road to Screwfix, I think it was, to go and buy a high-vis jacket. I had 1 battery and 1 memory card, no CPL filter at all. And by about 10:30 in the morning, I was standing on the infield of a drift track. So, which was pretty alarming, and also I was on cloud 9. I had like high horsepower cars literally 6 feet away from me sideways, and that is actually when I met Dan Fegan whilst at that event. He kind of like took me under his wing and gave me some pointers and stuff like that. And then during lunchtime, we would like go around and explore the track, and we're chatting, and he goes, "Oh, look, we like there's a few of them there, and they all shot for a website called Fueltopia." And they were like, "Oh, would you like to like come and join?" And so Dan really was like quite formative in like my car photography, in so much as he would help me with advice. He'd get me access to stuff. He would drive me to like car shoots and stuff like that. So it was really good having him as like a mentor to kind of lean on and ask advice and, you know, grow, because I really had not much idea of what I was doing. So, and he also introduced me to like the visual storytelling side of things as well. So obviously Fueltopia is a website. You can't just bang up a set of photographs and leave it as that. We had to learn to write like an article to talk about it. So you not just describe the car. You want to like talk to the owner, find the backstory, like talk about some of the technical if you want to. Depends on what your readership was. But that was a lot of fun. And from there, I carried on shooting with Fieldtopia. And then eventually I picked up a few magazines that wanted me to go and do features for them. So I started bouncing around doing a few features for like Fast Car or Japanese Performance Magazine. I then got picked up, I think, on Facebook by a Norwegian editor because I'd been to an event in Norway called Gatbill. And he'd seen my work, and then he was like, look, I can't attend the event. Would you mind going in my place? We'll pay you like X amount per vehicle, and we want like 6. And I was like, well, that's going to pay for the whole trip and then some. So I was like, yep, so like, I'll go and do that.
Yeah.
And what was cool about that is like Kai, my editor, was a super nice guy, and he would allow me to keep the features for the Norwegian magazine, but I was also allowed to resell them to UK magazines as well. So it made it like definitely worth my while going there. And yeah, that's basically kind of brings us up to the present day. I mainly shoot feature cars rather than events now, purely because I like getting to know the owner. I like spending time with the car. Also, going to events is quite expensive and takes up a lot of time, and it's normally a whole weekend, and there's a lot of travel involved. Definitely can't do that right now. So
Nick and me, actually, we did some car shoots recently.
Oh, yeah.
And but we used a slightly different technique. We basically lit individual parts of the car individually, and then composited the whole thing together after the fact. And so I think the first car, we did a test shoot with my old RAV4.
Yeah.
And I think we ended up, it was over 100 shots that were composited together. So, you know, you light individual bits, like you light the wing mirror, and then you light the, I don't know, the tire and the rim of the tire and everything else. And then you basically, you composite all these individual bits together. That was the best looking RAV4 you've ever seen.
It was sexy. Yeah, it was sexy.
But it's a completely different technique, of course, to light painting.
And they look very different as well.
Yeah, it's a completely different look. So that was our experience with shooting cars in that respect. It's a completely different process, obviously. Yeah. But nevertheless, it was it's good fun.
Yeah, it really was. And obviously compositing 100 odd photos is extremely time consuming.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot to go in there. But I'm guessing that with the technique that you employ, Dave, actually perhaps that's slightly quicker for you. I don't know how many passes do you normally take on a car when you're light painting in your technique?
So the truthful answer is as many as it takes.
Okay, fair enough.
But typically, if I plan to shoot one for the background, headlights and tail lights, one for the side of the car, one for the front of the car, and potentially a rim light around the back. So like 5 is what I always aim for. It really depends. Every car is completely different. It depends whether it's a solid car paint or a metallic. It depends if it's like black or white or if it's a color. It depends if the car's wrapped, because that has a huge difference to the amount of fall off you get on the light. So there's tons of like factors to it, but I shoot until I've got what I want and it looks the way I want it. So everyone's different, and which is like what I like about automotive photography is there's a million different ways that you can do it. Like you can just use daylight, you can use like morning or evening sunlight, you can do it at night, you can use the flashlight, you can use the flash gun, constant lighting, whatever you want to do. There's tons of different ways, and that's just static stuff as well, not to mention motion pieces as well.
It's interesting what you were saying about different types of paint reacting in different ways. We found that we shot the RAV4, and then a little while later we shot a Ferrari, and the modifiers that we used on the RAV really didn't work on a Ferrari at all. It was just we were getting like weird reflections, and it was just not working. And we had to kind of do a number of different passes, just trying out different modifiers, just to see what will give us the best result. And it was just a really different experience from the first shoot. So that was really something we realized right there and then, is that different cars, different paints really react in completely different ways, and it's just it's just a matter of just trying lots of different things.
It makes sense when you talk about it afterwards.
When you think about
this,
it,
right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
It certainly wasn't something that came to the forefront of my mind that it's painted. It's
especially because on the RAV we kept everything really soft. I really like big soft boxes and everything else, and it worked really well. On the Ferrari, that really didn't work. It really didn't work at all. Maybe it was because of the way that the car's shaped and all the all the round kind of course and everything. But actually, we found that just using a basic reflector and just literally firing hard light at it gave us the best results on that. Yeah. It's just really unexpected. But it's that's the thing that I really loved about it, was that it is like you say, every day's a school day, and like you learn something new every day. The end result's pretty cool. Yeah. But it took us a while to get there. We managed to reduce the overall number of shots down from 100 to 30. So
nice.
So, we're getting there. Not quite at 5 yet, but working on that. But yeah. So that's just something we're just experimenting with a little bit.
I'll tell you what, it's going to be almost dusk when we're finished up with this tonight. Mm-hmm. Go and do my car.
Well, do we have a light? That's the question, huh?
Oh, yeah. Well,
in actual fact, we've got some LEDs.
Yeah,
so we can try it.
We can take some out.
You've got a torch on your iPhone.
Well, there you go.
It might take a while, but it'll do
I'm sure. Yeah, once it stopped raining, because it's like a bit of a dilution.
Oh, yeah, true.
Light painting in the rain is not fun. I've done that before.
Right.
It's quite alarming, like holding a very powerful battery and your camera's getting all wet.
Yeah.
It's fun.
So Dave, apart from light painting cars and doing CGI stuff, you also run a YouTube channel.
I do, yes.
Cool. So I've checked out a number of your videos, and of course some of them explain how to do light painting in the first place. So for any of our viewers and listeners, if you're interested in checking that out, then we'll put the link to the YouTube channel in the description.
Thank you.
But so how did you get started on YouTube?
Yeah, it was light painting that got me started in YouTube.
Right.
Purely because I got sick and tired. It's going to sound egotistical, and I really don't mean it to be, but I got sick and tired of being asked, like over Instagram or Facebook or whatever, how did you do that? Yeah. So I thought, I kind of felt like it's a necessity just to make a video so I can answer the question. And there you go. That's how I did it. But social media being the hungry beast that it is, one video is never enough. Hence why there's so many that I've put out. But yeah, that was kind of a necessity. And like, I can't remember the exact year that I started. I think it's 2018 or 2017. It was one of the two. I can't remember. Might even be 2019. I'm not sure. But it just felt like now's the time that I should be doing it. Like photography is like losing its traction. People consume their media in a different way. They don't read blog posts and as much as they used to. Like you look at our site traffic and it's just dipped like on blogs. But so people have content available on their phones a lot easier now. So videos are a lot more engaging, I feel. So that's kind of why I wanted to do it. And like I mentioned earlier, like I wasn't very good at it, and in my opinion, I'm still not that good at it at all. But because I'm not good at something, it makes me want to do it more. I get hungry and I want to go after that. And it was quite a humbling experience at first, because I was trying to film it on my 5D Mark III, which has amazing autofocus in stills, but it has no autofocus in video. So I had to pre-focus every time. So I had to use a light stand to like put it there, and I go, right, that's where my eye's going to be. Okay, move it out of the way.
I shoot everything on a Nikon D750. It's terrible. The video autofocus is non-existent, basically.
Yeah. But I actually make all my YouTube videos with a Canon M50, so a tiny entry-level mirrorless camera. But it's phenomenal. It does great, and the face tracking on it, I could be on the other side of the room and it picks me up. It's amazing.
Nice. Yeah, I found this with I've got a Fuji X100F.
Yeah.
And although, it's not necessarily a camera that's very well known for its video performance or anything like that, but the face tracking is pretty good. And actually, the video, coming straight out of the camera without any like color grading or anything like that, it looks pretty damn good.
Yeah.
It's one of these things. I mean, if it wasn't for the like 12-minute, recording limit, which for like podcasting, video podcasting, it isn't, doesn't really work very well.
It's not.
But generally speaking, like to produce videos at home, man, I would use that a million times over the Nikon, and although it seems just like a relatively small kind of point and shoot kind of type of a camera, it does, surprising how good it actually is.
But and sometimes having a smaller camera is like less intimidating to
also,
get it started.
Yeah.
And like when I just assumed I'd be okay at YouTube, and it's a lot more work than I actually thought it was ever going to be. It's you guys know it's super hard. Like there's so much you have to do. Like for a 6-minute video, there's probably 2 hours worth of filming and probably 16 hours worth of editing behind it.
And actually, that's something that's well worth touching on. Is the production value in your YouTube videos is awesome.
Thank you, man.
It's awesome. They're a pleasure to watch. It doesn't matter what the topic is. They're just really enjoyable to watch because you've clearly taken time and effort to make it the best that you can within a reasonable amount of time. I love that. It's just, it shows me, to me, when I'm watching that, it shows me it's someone who cares about what they're doing. And that automatically makes me want to watch it and take in what you've got to say.
I think that's really the difference between, a 6-minute video that takes 7 minutes to make and a 6-minute video that takes 20 hours to make. It's like that's where you can see the difference. Reading that. So
totally.
And it's all things that I learned. Like I keep going back to the learning. I don't mean to bash on too much about it, but like for me, when I got into YouTube, is I looked at my videos and I looked at other people. So it's like, well, why does theirs look better? Okay, so the background needs to be better. Okay, we'll make the background better. Why does it still not look as good? Okay, we need better lighting. I don't have any dedicated video equipment. I use a Westcott Apollo 24x28 softbox with a video light inside it. So that softbox made for strobes, which I used to use for my portrait work, and I use that as my key light and stuff like that. The blue light that I have behind me is a neon sign on in my apartment. There's all these kind of things, and like I put more effort into them in now because I kind of learned if I'm sat there on a locked off camera talking for 20 minutes, whether what I have to say is interesting is besides the point. People get bored. So I have lots of different camera shots, and I also feel like if you can, like this goes back to like Fueltopia when we used to write the blogs as well. Is like if you can show something in a picture, it's better than doing it in words. So like I always try and film something rather than just say what I did, because it's more interesting for someone else to look at. And I quite like finding new or interesting shots. And the more I learn about video lighting, the more it helps me in like my day job, but it also helps me when I'm out photographing. It's all these. You think, because you have to think creatively, you have to think in a different way that you normally would. It's not like you're reading a rule book, you're thinking for yourself. So you find all these alternative ways of doing things. And I love that. That just keeps it inspirational to me. It keeps me interested. It makes me want to do more of it. And I often go off in a daydream when I think about what I could do for my next video and like what I could do for my next photo shoot. And I like planning it down to the T, but then leaving yourself enough room to do what you need to do.
What's your plan with your YouTube channel? Like, what's the plan for the future with that?
Honestly, you want me really selfishly? I want the 100,000 plaque, 100,000 subscribers.
Cool. Nice.
I would love that. Yeah. Just so I can show off to people. No, but I don't know, for YouTube. I don't know. I'm not good at public. I never was good at public speaking. I was never a confident person, and I think these are important life skills you're learning.
Yeah.
I think it's important to be able to address an audience and convey what you need to say in the most efficient way as well. And I like all of those skills that I didn't think about when I got into it, but the more I do it, the more I understand it, and the more I see its relevance.
Do you find it interesting to look back at some of your earlier videos and just look at yourself and the way you were talking, and then compare it to more recent videos? Do you see like a progression in the way that you are in front of the camera?
Or
is it still as cringeworthy as it was at the
beginning? Because it kind of makes me feel like, oh, I'm terrible. I shouldn't do this anymore. I tend to watch videos like either that have done well or that haven't done well in my channel. So it's like understand what worked well here and what didn't work well here. But honestly, I really don't watch many of my YouTube videos. After spending all that time in the edit bay, like going through like the colors, the sound effects, the different shots, like I'm done with seeing it.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about this the other day, weren't we? That how our confidence has grown as these episodes have gone on, and our ability to just I don't know, talk off the cuff. I don't know how else to really
conversation out of nowhere.
Right, you know, and particularly for luckily we're doing it together, and we're having a conversation on camera. But if you're doing it on your own, directly just to a lens, well, I've done that before myself, and that's a lot harder than it sounds.
But you know what was weird? Like for us, when we started this podcast at the beginning of lockdown, because literally, as far as photography was concerned, literally all of the projects that I had set up for the next few months just got canceled. It was like it literally went to zero, and we had just literally, started to kind of to work together. Like I had decided that I wanted to include video in my sort of corporate photography business, and so we just made plans. We set up some projects, and it was all kind of starting to kind of work. And then like that, it was gone, it's just back down to zero. And so, we had been talking about the idea of doing a podcast for about maybe like 6 months or something up to that point. And then literally we were just sitting, talking on Zoom or whatever, one day I was just thinking like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Well, do you remember that podcast idea? Now is as good a time as ever,
Yeah.
And of course, at that point, because we were in full lockdown, we couldn't be in the same room together. So it was literally, us talking to each other on Zoom, me being in my place, having a camera on me, and Nick being in his place, having a camera on me. And then, me sending my files over to him, and then, putting everything together in the edit. And so when we got to the point where, lockdown was eased to the point where we could actually be in the room together. I remember we were filming the first episode on this set, as it were. That was weird.
Yeah.
Wasn't that weird? It's like, all of a sudden we're actually talking to each other, like face to face, having a conversation, rather than like after spending like, I don't know, whatever, like, 13 weeks or something, just talking to each other on a screen. That was really bizarre.
Yeah. And it's amazing how the chemistry changed.
Oh, it was like, it was
in a really positive way, It's because, when you're talking over Zoom, you're always got that little pause and anticipation of someone talking, but when you're with someone, you can talk over each other ever so slightly and get the point, and it just rolls.
Especially when we're doing it over Zoom. I had in-ears at one point, and I could barely hear what Nick was saying, and so I was always half guessing.
Can you hear me now, Kersten?
But I was like, I was like half guessing, and so my responses were sometimes when I sort of listened back to some of them, I know exactly that I didn't really understand the question. 100%.
This is new.
Because I remember, like, because we had constant audio problems. Like the first, 8 episodes or something, we were constantly battling with, like, there was too much bleed because at first I had a speaker, in the room, and it was like bleeding into the mic, and then we had to use compression, and it was just like, it took us a while to figure that one out, right?
It was tough with your laptop playing back the audio from Zoom, your mic picking that up, and it being too loud for it to be gated out, and you couldn't. I'm getting into audio. I do audio as well in general, and
we had lighting issues.
So you couldn't phase reverse it. None of it was working. So it's like, well, we're gonna have to go headphones ultimately, right? Sorry, Kay. What
we had like lighting issues. We had in my place. I had this. We built this little extension, and it has a skylight, which it sounded like a good idea at the time, and because I kind of figured, or this is great, having a little extension to your house, and you can use it as a photo studio, and of course when lockdown started, I thought like it's great for video as well. But having a skylight without a blind or anything to block the light, it basically means that when it's a cloudy day, the lighting is one way, and then when it's sunny, you've got full on sun on your head, and it's just, man, it drove me around the bend. You know, I was like, in the end, I was like climbing up on the roof, like taping black.
He's not joking.
Foam board. Oh, the damn thing is just, it's stupid. So this is much better.
Yeah, I hope so.
It was like,
amazing.
Man, it's crazy.
Absolutely amazing.
But so okay, so hitting 100,000 is like that's you go. Where are you at now?
Subscribers?
Yeah.
Like 3,600, I think.
Okay, that's good. We've hit 35.
Nice. Congratulations.
Wicked. I know. We're going to make it to 40. That's our big goal. Actually, 50.
So if
50,
all
right?
of your 3,500 subscribers could also...
Yeah. So it's, man, YouTube is a slog. It's really a slog. But
it's a deep and dark and wonderful place.
Yeah.
But it's impossible to understand.
Oh, completely.
Totally.
The one thing I find really interesting about the audio version of this podcast is that we can see on a map where people are when they listen to our podcast. And that's the one thing, because with YouTube, you've got the analytics and you look at the stats all the time. And I found that maybe I got a little bit addicted, to like looking at the stats maybe a little too much.
Yeah.
It's getting a little weird.
I check it at least once a day.
Well,
at least once an hour.
Well, yeah. But the thing that I find, like with the audio podcast, is that's really the one thing that kind of, that really does it for me, is like when I see there's a new listener in Novosibirsk, or like there's repeated downloads in Maryland, or something, and you kind of there's somebody sitting there who's interested enough to listen to our episodes like on a weekly basis, somewhere in the depths of Georgia. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone's picking up what you're putting down.
I know, it's really cool. It's like that's the thing that really. We have a new listener in Portugal. Did you know?
In where?
In Portugal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know. That's the kind of thing that I find like that is really the most interesting one.
Because numbers can get a bit like whatever, they kind of lose their meaning. But like when you start understanding like where your viewership is from, that's when it starts like blowing. It's like, I've got people listening in like India or Japan.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
how?
Right.
I don't even speak their language. Like it's pretty impressive. But then you see like, there's subtitle users. Oh, okay. Like it always blows my mind that there's someone that's like outside of your immediate circle of friends.
Well, this is the thing. Like in the very beginning, you can kind of, I remember like in the very beginning we had like, a listener in Scotland, and I'm like, that's Dan. Of course it's Dan, And then you get to the point where like there's a listener somewhere, and you can't immediately think like, I don't know anybody there. Like that's not somebody. That's not one of my friends, or family. That's like that's like not somebody in Calgary where I have a lot of family. Like okay, and I know well it's probably my cousins listening or whatever, and or in Germany or something, and then all of a sudden you have somebody in the south of France, and you go, I don't know who that is. So whoever you are in Portugal when you're listening to the show, greetings.
Yes. Did you just devil horns that?
I absolutely.
You did, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Nice. For sure.
Nice
Why
work.
Yeah, that's.
I find stats weird and wonderful, frustrating at times, but sometimes just. Yeah. I don't know. Podcasts are a great one because like people love to consume podcasts, and if you've ever driven across any state in America, there's a lot of road, so you need something to listen to, and radio is often terrible. So
absolutely,
podcasts are like positive, and I like going out for walks and listening to podcasts as well. Like feels like you got someone with you, just kind of having a little chat.
It's nice, and because everybody's got their. Those people who listen to podcasts have their kind of favorite podcasts, and their podcasts in all sorts of different formats. You have the 5-minute podcast, you've got a half hour or an hour podcast, or the Joe Rogan 3 hours plus, podcast. And it just kind of depends on what is that you're doing at that time. So when I go out for a run and I'm going to be running for a half hour, I'm going to listen to a podcast that's about half an hour long, and when it's an off day and I really have nothing else to do, I might actually make it through an entire episode of Joe Rogan's podcast. If I'm lucky.
On Spotify.
On Spotify, then.
Yeah. Quite.
We have about 3 listeners on Spotify, did you know?
Really?
Yeah, man, that's interesting. Anyway, so cool. So how did lockdown in the United States, how did that affect you just generally as a photographer? I mean, I know you took the opportunity to go out and shoot cars in your neighborhood, but what did that do to you as a photographer just in general? Did it have an impact on the business side of what you do, or what was sort of, just explain what happened when lockdown actually hit?
Yeah, so for me, like, first of all, from a business point of view, like photography, like I'll be honest and frank with you and your listeners, like it does. I don't earn a huge amount of money from it. I don't actively seek work with it either. It's a pure passion project for me, and if someone wants to pay me, then great. I did, however, have a few photo shoots lined up, and understandably they all got cancelled, which was a bit of a bummer. But in my day job, because photography is getting locked down, I work in CGI, so everyone who can't shoot turns to CGI, and then all of a sudden, I am the busiest I've ever been in the last 10 years.
Wow.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I currently have 3, maybe 4 projects that I'm looking after right now. So
did that mean that you ended up obviously working from home?
Yeah. So we everyone kicked out of their office. No one's allowed to go back to work. We have a couple of different like laws in here in California, and non-essential workers are not allowed back into the office. And I was always an old school believer of, like, you should go to work. So you're at work, and then when you come home from work, you leave work at work, and home is home. And so I was not looking forward to working from home. I was dragged kicking and screaming away from my desk and plonked up on my breakfast bar in my kitchen. And I hated it.
There's a but here somewhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hated it for a long time. But the thing is, now, like most things, most situations, they take a bit of time to adjust, but then you learn how to bend it into, like, your way. And what I soon realized is that often when I was at work, if I had an idea for a YouTube video or I wanted to edit a photo differently, couldn't do it at work. I had to wait until I get home, and then I'd be too tired to do it, or I couldn't be bothered, or I'd forgotten. Whereas now, if I'm sat there, I've got my works laptop and I've got my MacBook here. If I've got something, I want to quickly have a look at that, I can just do it. I can do it whenever I want. So, like, my working hours are a bit more flexible. Like, I start work way earlier than I should. That means I can, if I want to take time out to do a podcast, or if I want to go out for a 2-hour walk down the beach or something, I can, and I can just make up the time whenever. And that's been the biggest change for me. Like mentally, it's just like reallocating your time and rethinking what your normal work structure is. Like, just being a bit more fluid with it, and doing whatever feels right at your time. I mean, it doesn't mean I sit there and do nothing all day. I still smash all my normal work, but if I feel the urge to make a tweak on a video or edit a photo or look up a shoot location, I don't feel guilty about doing it, and that's been really liberating. Still hate working from home because I don't have an office. I have a breakfast bar, which means I have to tear everything down every time I want to cook and then put it back up. I would love to have like a spare bedroom or something that I can turn into, like, my YouTube studio, or like my office, like home office workspace. That would be amazing. But do you know how much rent is out in here in California?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a not too dissimilar situation in the sense that I literally just built a desk, which is kind of it's sort of in the living room area. Yeah. But because for the same reason, we don't have a spare bedroom, but it's a dedicated area now, so that, I actually have a desk with some shelves and, put some lighting up, and it's a comfortable, creative place for me to work.
It's a zone.
Yeah, it's a zone, exactly. And it's not ideal in the sense that, it is like practically in the living room, and, I have kids, so, they're not doing anything. And if they decide they just want to hang out on the couch, then that's what's happening, But at least it's a zone, and it's not like I don't have to set up my computer all the time takes things down. And so at least I've sort of gotten around that problem finally after 17 weeks in lockdown. But yeah, I mean, so how does it work in the US at the moment? So you're so is the whole lockdown thing relaxing, or where are you at, relatively speaking?
We're kind of similar to how it is in the UK. I don't think we're allowed any more gatherings any larger than 6 people, I think it is.
Right.
We have to wear face masks outside and in shops and in restaurants, basically everywhere we go. Restaurants aren't allowed to do indoor dining. There's only like outdoor patio dining is allowed, and each table's kind of like 6 feet away from the other. So it's been very interesting watching a few businesses around here adapt and change to that kind of policy. It's kind of cool. I mean, you're allowed outside as many times as you want to go. I think you're allowed to do internal flights, although you'll probably have an entire jet to yourself if you do that. I'm quite lucky. Californians are very health conscious and like germophobic in general, so everyone stays apart. Apart from in the supermarket, that's a bit annoying. They get real close to you then. And but yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same, except we have to wear a mask like more often. And I had to go and attend a photo shoot up north 2 weeks ago, and I had to have a COVID test. I had to, when I arrived, I had to have my temperature taken. I had to wear a face mask and then a face shield. And it was in the valley as well. So it was about 35, 36 degrees centigrade. And I'm inside a warehouse that was rather warm, and you're all like masked up. And so sweat pouring down your face. And that was that 12-hour day or something like that. It's pretty brutal.
So, I mean, obviously you're British and you're in the US and all of this is going on. Do you feel kind of cut off from Britain? Like, how does that feel?
No, I don't feel cut off. First of all, I should explain. I've never been one to get homesick, so I'm fine being by myself. It doesn't bother me. But the things like WhatsApp, Zoom, and Skype or whatever, like I can speak to my family whenever I want. What is a little bit lonely, I suppose, is like we're the last people to go to sleep. So,
right.
If I want to have a conversation in the evening, once done with my work day, then all of my friends and family in the UK, well, they're in bed, and probably rightly so. So, my mornings are much, much more stressful than they used to be in London. Like in London, you wake up for everyone else, and you kind of give each other a bit of room until you've had a coffee. Whereas here, like, open up my laptop and it's like I'm getting yelled at by like multiple sources of information. It's like, this is a lot. I'm going to need a lot of coffee to get through this one.
I used to feel the same thing working when I did work for Amazon, because obviously it's a very global company. But we had London, Seattle, and India and Japan. They were the core hubs across the globe. So you'd wake up and you'd have everything coming from India. Yeah. You'd deal with all of that, deal with everything you have to deal with that day, and then you'd pass it all on to the US. There you go, deal with that. And then the cycle just continues. What a nightmare.
Yeah.
Absolutely nightmare.
I know what that's like, to just feel like people are just literally scraping their plate onto yours like every morning. It's it can get a bit tiresome, but the thing is, you just have to cope with it. It does mean that your morning's very busy, but then your afternoons are a bit more peaceful, a bit more relaxing. Like go for a run, go for a skate, or whatever. No one's going to know. Drink a few beers.
Go for a skate. That's very Californian.
Yeah, I know.
Very Venice Beach, in fact.
I bought a longboard as soon as I moved out here.
Oh, there you go.
There's so many people doing it. I should be doing it. I hadn't skated in about 20 years, and it did not go well. Actually, I went into the store and I found a longboard. I was like, "Do you mind if I have a go on it?" And he was like, "Yeah, go out back, go and help yourself." And I stood on it, and I was like, "I'm too old and too fat and too scared. I'm not buying this." And then I left the store, and I was walking down by the beach. And I was like, "No, you're an idiot, Dave. Like, you went there to buy a board. Go back, buy that board." Yeah. So I bought it, and then I was like, "Well, I've got to skate home now." rather ambitiously thinking that I could skate 3 miles home.
Oh.
And I apologize. I've never apologized to more people in my life. Because I kept falling off the board and it kept shooting off.
I'm coming through.
Yeah, I can't turn.
Oh, I love that.
It was terrifying.
Oh man,
I've never done it myself.
have you never skated?
I've been on a skateboard when I was significantly younger than I am right now. I think I think I could stand it. My back will go. No,
Wow.
no, don't do that.
Yeah. I used to skate at school, and my school was at the bottom of this like really steep hill, and it's like probably about a mile and a half decline, and it ended in a really sharp right-hand curve that went over a bridge, and then my high school was at the other side of the bridge, and I used to skate to school, and I used to basically, I used to literally speed down this hill, cut that corner, despite the traffic and everything, like cut that corner at breakneck speed. And usually I would make it, but there were occasions where I didn't. And I'd rock up at school, with like ripped jeans and like blood and everything else. And I remember like just walking into school, and every so often my teacher would be like, "Yeah, didn't make it today, huh?" Didn't make it at all. But then on the way back, I used to do the kind of the stereotypical like Back to the Future thing, where like you're at the bottom of the hill and you'd wait for some kind of truck or something.
And hold on.
Yeah, you just wait for like a truck or something to come by at the right speed, and you just kind of hang on the back of that, let it pull you up the hill.
Wow.
Yeah,
Right,
that's what it is.
All right, Marty.
That's right.
Yeah. If I did that, I'd look like Doc at the end. Yeah. That's good.
But I've never been good doing any tricks. That's not my thing.
No.
No, I don't know if you guys know, like Venice Beach, it has like that big concrete skate park, and like it's quite nice to go down there and just like watch everyone, because what they do is just phenomenal. But
different.
I definitely could not do that.
Yeah, I used to say like I used to skateboard as a commute type of tool. That's the thing. So I've never really been big on tricks or anything.
Just before I left working in London, it was a big thing using those little manual scooters.
Oh yeah,
right, the fold up ones, right? And they'd be skating. They'd jump off the train, jump on that, and scoot down the road to the office, like half a mile maybe at most. Which in itself I don't necessarily have an issue with, but it's when they start getting those scooters out in the office and start scooting from desk to desk. They're the people you want to throw out the window. And frustrated the hell out of me. So just scooting around. We're not in Google. This isn't Google.
Yeah.
You're in London.
Yeah. See, the problem is, they always come up with they come up with new things like all the time, and you get into grips with longboard, and then you see a one wheel, and you go, "Whoa, one wheel? What?
I want a one wheel so bad."
Oh my god! Yes,
I've got a YouTube channel. I should have a one wheel.
Well, clearly, absolutely, yeah, exactly. Yeah, my daughter saw one wheel for the first time the other day, and she's just like, you should see in her eyes. She just went, "No, you don't have to push. Oh my god, it's got one wheel." Awesome.
It's biblically expensive as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's it. That's why you got to make it to 100,000, because I'm pretty sure you can get sponsored.
So on that, because you mentioned your YouTube channel, you need 1,000 subscribers, which is not particularly difficult. If you go and beg, plead, or whatever, you can get. What's hard is you need 4,000 watch hours as well.
Yeah.
And I think you guys would have an advantage because yours long form content. It's YouTube.
Yes.
So your podcast on YouTube. So I reckon you guys, once you get to 1,000, will probably monetize like that. Because when I crossed over the 1,000 threshold, it wasn't until I got like 2,500 until I could actually get monetized.
Right?
Well, see, we have an advantage because we only have 35 subscribers. So if we only have to bribe 35 people to watch, like, just spend 100 hours or something.
Well, if you got a VPN, just like log into different.
Exactly.
Oh, I do.
So if we can make it to 36 after this video, that'd be phenomenal.
Yeah, stunning.
I better make sure I'm subscribed, otherwise I'd be a terrible guest.
Exactly. Right.
Dave, where can people find you on social? What's your YouTube channel, your Instagram, Facebook? all of that?
Rather conveniently, I am at Shooting Dave on everything, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Like
Perfect.
I'm on there at Shooting Dave.
Fantastic. So yeah, I highly recommend check out Dave's Instagram and his YouTube channel. I've certainly learned a couple of things, and I'm looking forward to more videos for sure.
Hell yeah.
Right,
I just released one today on using gelled lights on a photo shoot.
I saw that pop up. I saw the cover photo, and I saw the photo for that on your Instagram feed as well. And the photo is awesome.
Thanks, man. Really,
really cool. Anyone watching, go check it out. You'll know what it is. I mean, garage. There's a pink stroke kind of purple light knocking about in it. You'll see the photo. Just go and hone in on that and check it out. Won't say anymore. Awesome photo.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right, Dave, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast.
No, thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic. So this is it. We've come to the end of episode 17. Is it 17?
Yeah.
Episode 17 of the Camera Shake podcast. I hope you enjoyed this as much as we did. And we'll be seeing you again every Thursday.